Pioneer Forest consists of a little more than 140,000 acres in 5 Missouri counties, what we call the Ozarks. It's the southern part of Missouri. In 1954, Leo Drye, a St. Louis businessman and environmentalist, bought the lands of National Distilleries. And he continued the individual tree selection, uneven age management that had been practiced before. And that was in 1954, almost 60 years ago, and we have continued to manage that land in the same manner.
What we like to do with Pioneer Forest, we're on an uneven age system, and by definition that's 3 distinct age classes. And if you can think about that, we want to have saplings, poles, and saw logs all intermixed on the same acre. And sometimes we have more than that. We have 4 ages. But what we like to have is this structure. And you can kind of look out through here and see where we have large trees. We also have smaller trees. And then at the ground level, like what we were talking about, we have these seedling sprouts all over. And these things do accumulate in the understory. They grow up and die back, waiting for an opening to be created when we enter. Now we enter on about a 20-year interval, depending upon the crown closure. We're trying to mimic natural processes. We start looking and seeing, well, overall, there's openings all the time, but overall, is the canopy closing up? What is the condition of the larger trees? Do the younger pole trees have room to grow? And then after we decide to enter a piece of ground, then it goes to an individual tree selection where, do we have spacing? Can we carry this tree over another rotation of approximately 20 years? Is this tree ready for harvest? And that's the process the timber marker goes through, evaluating the trees. He looks at the maturity of the tree, the site that it's on, the position it is in the forest. Is it dominant, co-dominant, or suppressed? Trying to match the species to the tree, trying to maintain a forested cover, and at the same time creating openings for the regeneration. I would take this black oak out of the stand for a couple of reasons. One, it's up on the ridge, so it becomes a little bit off-site. Ridges tend to have the hard pan under the soil. They tend to get dry in the Ozark summers. It has a few conchs on it which make it look like it's probably got some heart rot in it. The crown is not too bad, although it's thin. I would remove that tree. It also would release this post oak over here. It'll create an opening in the crown. We'll keep the pine down below it. We have mixed stand here with some pine.
Silviculture is called the art and science of managing trees. And the science, research, and that takes care of that. The art is what the individual forester has to pick up on. And that's kind of what we prided ourselves on Pioneer Forest, is long-term employees, well-trained, looking at individual trees, and they have the art down as well as the science. So you get that look, and it's a look that, first of all, it still looks like a forest. It doesn't look like a manicured plantation of some sort.
One thing you'd want to watch is just them old limbs, because they're liable to fly anywhere. Well, the limbs are so brittle in them that they'll fly back at you so easy. And my brother got his jaw broke here about 2 months ago. I've had one hit me, had 30-some stitches in my head one time right here.
Did you really?
That's about the worst I ever got.
So the timber faller works, number one, with his direction of falling to where he doesn't damage the tree as he's falling it, and he's also picking a hole to where the tree, when it hits the ground, will line up to where it'll skid properly, working with the skidder, so he doesn't have to damage things hooking onto him and getting it to pull behind the skidder.
Pioneer Forest was owned by an individual, Leo Drye, and he operated it at a profit, although that was not his motivation. We kept our staff minimal, and we were pretty frugal. Now the foundation, the LAD Foundation, owns that land and managed it with the same goals and objectives that the founder, Leo Drye, had. So we're making a profit. It's a long-term proposition growing trees, as you well know. So you still have to be very careful on upfront costs. You know, if you're going to do a lot of timber stand improvement work and invest a lot of money per acre, you're carrying that forward for maybe 50 or 60 years. Even at a small interest, it adds up. Like all businesses, you have to watch your expenses. But it can be done profitably, and Pioneer Forest has demonstrated that for 60 years in the Ozarks. It can be done profitably. A lot of our neighbors look over the fence and see what we do. We're treating it with respect and logging it properly and maintain that forest character. We've been in the area for, like I mentioned, over 60 years, and some of the farmers and other landowners next to us like what we do. And that's happened over and over.
Guys were the first state loggers of the year. The state started a new program, Logger of the Year, and it's loggers that do a very good job with applying best management practices, water bars, doing a good job felling the timber so they don't damage the standing trees, doing a good job skidding so they don't hub trees and skid trees, doing it with protecting the trees. We nominated Ron and his brothers, Tuttle Brothers Logging, and they were the first state loggers of the year.
Yeah, he kind of got that for us, so we bragged us up a lot, I think.
Well, in 40 years of marking timber sales, I'd have to say you guys were the best. I hate to say it in front of you, but I'm retired. Maybe I can do that, yeah.
It is labor intensive, and that's one of the negatives about it. If you're into high production, and you're marking individual tree selection, a man can only mark so many trees in a day, selecting them this way. Now, we've not had any trouble with that in the fact that we're harvesting, let's say, 10 million board feet a year, and 6 men. It's not. It's work, but that man is not only selecting the trees, he's going back and looking at the harvest and saying, we don't want our residual trees being skinned up. We don't don't want them injured. We want a good logging job, because these trees that we're leaving, we may carry them 60 years in the future. And each time you come in at a 20-year harvest, you have a chance of having a major injury with the poor logger. And so he's looking at that, he's monitoring the sale, he's watching the trees that he's going back and walking over his harvest that's cut before. But even though it's labor intensive, there's a big payoff. Those trees are, they're what you manage for. It's a beautiful sight to see a healthy forest.